Hi everyone, I am Kathryn and welcome to my kitchen. We've got an exciting holiday coming up here in just a few days, and I thought what better to help you guys with than what to bring to Thanksgiving dinner. Sides and desserts are always my go-to. Desserts are really always my go-to. I thought I'd start with a classic. Who doesn't love pumpkin pie? I am always making my own pie crust, so why don't we start with that? I have got my trusty recipe, which if you can tell, has been through a pie or two as it has many stains on it. But the pie crust I make is going to start with a cup and a third of flour. Now I've already measured that out, and because it's the first thing I'm going to add, I am going to put all of it in there. If your mixer is already going, I really don't recommend putting it in all at once because just like that, it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you. All my flour is in there. I'm also going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. Not too bad. And then the pie crust that I'm making today, I know you can make it with lard, I know you can make it with butter. My favorite is actually shortening. So Crisco, I have got a half a cup of that, and I am going to add that right into my mixer here. And then carefully, we're going to start mixing our crust. You'll notice we've got some flour mixing in with our shortening. And as it starts kind of clumping together and really incorporating together, you can slowly start to add your ice cold water. Recipes always call for this amount through this amount tablespoons of water. I always lean towards the heavier side. I always start slowly with we'll add the 3 to 6. I always go straight for the 6 because I know that's what it needs. So as it's mixing, I just slowly incorporate my water, and I let that mix right up. Alright, as that's finishing mixing together, I'm going to move over here and dust my surface just a little bit with flour. And I am going to get ready to move my crust over. It is mixed up nicely for me, and I think I can do the rest of the work. Go ahead and press this off of my mixing blade. We do not want the mixing blade in the pie crust. I think somebody would notice that. We'll take our bowl over here. Dump our contents out a little bit. And we want this to all be one ball. Alright. You don't want to mix it or knead it too much because then you're going to get a really tough dough ball. And that makes for a tough crust. You just want it to kind of pad together and a nice little disc, if you will. Now what you need to do is cover this with plastic wrap and let it sit in the refrigerator. So let me grab some plastic wrap out here. And if you are anything like me, plastic wrap is not my friend. If you can tell, this box has also been through the ringer a time or two. Let's see if I can get a small piece off for us here. All right. So covering my pie crust in plastic wrap. And you pop this in the fridge for an hour because my lovely cameraman, my husband, is closest to the fridge. I'm going to have him pop that in the fridge. And I will get started on our filling. So for our filling today, we need fridge, not freezer. That is the lovely squeakiness of our fridge. Got a nice clean bowl. This is actually my favorite bowl. I love the glass KitchenAid bowls. But I'm going to go ahead and add that to my mixer now. And I'm going to start making the filling for our pumpkin pie. Now pumpkin pie filling is pretty simple. You might find a lot of different recipes out there, but if you are like me, the easiest, smallest amount of ingredients possible is what I like to go for. And this is a tried and true recipe. Like I mentioned, my cameraman is my husband. and his favorite dessert happens to be pumpkin pie. So I've made this for his birthday and for every Thanksgiving. Now, pie crust recipe out of here. Next recipe is my pumpkin pie recipe. What I need one crust, already done. First thing I want to add though into my mixer here are 2 eggs. Be careful, no shells. So we have cracked 1 egg in and 2 eggs in. Go ahead and start beating that right up. And the next thing we need to add is our sugar. Now, I don't have sugar in a nice little bowl or a nice container like my flour because if anybody out there is like me and has done online shopping during this time staying at home, you might have made a mistake or two. And my mistake was accidentally buying 25 pounds of sugar. I am slowly making my way towards it. I really think Christmas cookies will really help me out here. But all I need out of this bag is 3/4 cup. I've got my 1/2 cup measuring spoon right here. And we're just gonna slowly add that into our eggs. So, since it's a half, I need 1 full and 1/2 of the half. All right. So we are mixing that together. I'm gonna mix it a little bit faster. Next thing we need to add into here is some spice. And shockingly enough, pumpkin pie spice goes in the pumpkin pie. You're gonna wanna have about 1.5 teaspoons of this. And I absolutely love this. And it's really just a mix of a lot of other spices. But so we're gonna do 1/2. 1 and 1.5. The next thing we need to add is a little bit of salt. Put the lid on there before I spill it. So we have got some salt. These are actually the salt and pepper shakers from my wedding. We need 1/2 cup. That is 1 teaspoon. So we're just gonna slowly put a little bit of salt in here. I always pour the salt in over my batter because if I put just a little bit extra, that's okay. Just not a whole lot extra. I have a sister who accidentally made meringue with salt instead of sugar. She said it turned out okay, just really salty. I'll take her word for it. So I've added in my salt. The next thing I'd like to add in is my pumpkin. Now a lot of people are going to use canned pumpkin, and that's perfectly fine. But what I love to do is actually freeze pumpkin, especially we just had fall, had all those pumpkins for sale. So I actually cook, clean, and freeze my own pumpkin. I did find out that the pumpkin you buy in a can is actually not all pumpkin. It's actually a lot of squashes kind of mixed with pumpkin, so it's not as strong a pumpkin flavor as the natural all pumpkin. A can of pumpkin is equivalent to a little under 2 cups of pumpkin. So I have my 1/2 cup measuring spoon again. And I'm going to just slowly add this into my mixture here. That is 1/2. Here is 1. And coincidentally, I measured these bags in to be about 2 cups. So I should end up having to use the whole bag. Here's about 1/2. And we'll squeeze this bag. Best thing about disposable tablecloths, they're disposable. That being said, I feel like this is a really pretty tablecloth. And if I don't get it too messy, I could reuse it. Alright, last bit of pumpkin going in. Got a little bit on my hand. Pumpkin-y. Alright, as that is mixing together, I am going to add our very last ingredient, which is evaporated milk. It says shake well, so time to shake. And instead of using a can opener that's going to open it all the way around, what I like to do is just puncture a couple holes in it. So you have one on this side, one on this side to let out some air, and then slowly dump it into, carefully, and don't have it fly everywhere. Don't get too excited, just slowly mix it in. You'll notice this is a very wet batter. That means you're doing it right. You don't want it to be thick. It's gonna cook and thicken up in your pie crust. All right, so we've got an empty can there. We've got a well-mixing pumpkin pie. Something that I can do right now as this is finishing up mixing is start my oven. You're gonna start at really high temperature. You're gonna start at 425. So I'm gonna bake it at 425, start, and always check your oven, because I am notorious for putting things in the oven. Husband can attest to that, and we are all good, nothing is in there. So we'll let that get heated right up, come back over to our mixture, then turn that off. That slows down, pull this out, give it a little shake. And then, anything that got left up on the side, like this little bit of pumpkin, pour it down in there, mix it up a little bit. And that is ready for a pie crust. I don't know about you, but I think I realized that wasn't a whole hour. So our pie crust is still cooking and getting nice and chilled in our refrigerator, but I prepared for that. I made a pie crust ahead of time. Would my lovely assistant hand me a pie crust? Sorry for the squeaky fridge. I didn't use this whisk, so we can keep that one for later. This is the right one. I should have labeled first pie crust. So I've taken my pie crust out of my cling wrap. I can now sit it on a floured surface. I like to get both sides floured right away. I can put away my cling wrap because we're done with that for now, and get out my mother's rolling pin. Now your rolling pin, you're going to want to cover in flour as well, or else pie crust is just going to stick to it. So this is one of my favorite parts, is rolling out our dough. So you just go slow, going back and forth. And I really don't know if it helps or not, but I really love to just twist and turn the dough a little bit. And just roll it out. Rolling it out into the most circular shaped thing that we can create here. Add a little bit more flour here. We want to have a little bit of extra crust because we're not going to do a super decorative crust on this because it's a pumpkin pie and only a little bit of it shows. But we want to have enough to make sure it goes around the edges. And if you're not too sure, you can always give it a test run. Got my pie pan here. Nothing fancy. This is just a disposable pie pan. It's good to use disposable for a couple reasons. One, if you decide that you want to make your pie ahead of time and then freeze it, this is a perfect thing to do that in. The other reason this is so good is, say you go to your family's Thanksgiving, oh, you're getting pretty tired, you're ready to go, but people are not done with your pie. Leave the pie. So I've got my disposable, I've got my crust. Let's give this a test. Oh, not too bad. I'm going to make sure that I press my edges here on the bottom. And it seems to fit quite nicely. Now you notice I have a little bit of overhang around here, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of that right now. And I'm going to do that with just a little knife. Carefully, go ahead and just trim it to the edge of your pie pan. And what I love about this too is that this extra pie dough I can use for something else later. Not going to be a lot of leftover pie crust, but You can make some little mini hand pies. I have a plan to make some very, very delicious and highly anticipated. You put it around an apple dumpling. That's it. My mom has been calling me constantly going, are you going to make apple dumplings? Ooh, I think I'm going to come visit. We could have apple dumplings. And alas, here I am making a pumpkin pie. But maybe I'll surprise her and save this crust. Ooh, or I can use the crust that we made earlier. But, so I have put my edge that I've cut off all together. Can reuse that cling wrap from earlier. That is all ready to go back in the fridge. But I can do that in a minute. So for a very classic pie crust for a pumpkin pie, you know, you're not doing anything fancy. Like I said, you can press it with a fork and have that little crimped look. What I like to do is use my hands. And I have almost like I'm going to pinch somebody. It would be mean to pinch you right now. If you're going to pinch somebody, have those. And then your pointer finger, and you just push the pie crust into your finger, almost like you are going to pinch that. And that gives you that really pretty kind of triangular look to your pie crust. In my mind, that is what a pumpkin pie looks like. At least growing up, that's how my mom always did it. Or sometimes that's how the box pie does it. That's kind of why I wanted to do this video, is it's really not that hard to make pie from scratch. And it's not hard, but it is impressive to say, hey, I made this pie completely from scratch. And for some reason, people get very excited when you say you've made your own dough. Mainly because it's so flaky and delicious. The shortening, the butter, the lard especially makes a really great crust. But just something about the shortening is my favorite. So I got a little too crazy and didn't pinch those ones good enough. So I'm going to come back and fix those. But otherwise, we have a nice pie crust ready for our filling. So why don't we go ahead, make sure we've got a nice pressed edge. Now a lot of people think about poking with a fork. That's not necessary because we're going to have a filling inside of it. If you blind bake a crust or bake a crust without anything in it, maybe just some weights or something to kind of keep your crust down, then you want to poke it with a fork. Those crusts are going to be used to make like your pudding, pies, and things like that. But since we have a filling, we don't need to poke it. Just kind of perfecting some of those edges here. What do you think? Not so bad? He doesn't care what it looks like as long as it tastes good. So, let's go ahead, grab our mixture. I'm going to give it one more kind of stir since we did let it sit there for just a second. And the other really great thing about these glass bowls is they have a spout. Makes it nice and easy to just pour right into our crust. Look at that. That is the perfect color, perfect amount of spice. Oh, that is so good. Ooh, can I get the spatula without making a mess? Ooh, I can, but I got some in my hair. I was too excited flinging the spatula around. I like to get every last drop in that pie. All right. So we have got a pumpkin pie ready to go in the oven. And several bowls to go in the dishwasher. What we've got to wait for now is our oven to heat up. And that is why you heat the oven up a little bit sooner. But what we are going to do, remember I said 425 degrees. We're going to bake that for 15 minutes at that very high temperature. After that 15 minutes, we're going to go ahead, drop the temperature down to 350, and keep kind of a close eye on it. It's going to need to bake for about 40 to 50 minutes. The way we test a pumpkin pie is using a toothpick, a fork, or some people use like a knife, just inserting it right in the middle, and if it comes out mostly clean. Since it is going to be kind of warm, it can have some residue on it, but you want it to be nice and firm. You can usually tell. Just insert, comes out relatively clean, you are good to go. But we will go ahead, sit you guys down, and we'll check on this pie in 40 to 50 minutes. We got some ding. Let's grab a toothpick here. I always use a toothpick instead of a fork or a knife because I think it leaves less imprint. Let's check our pie. Oh, look at that. Ooh, I also love how warm the oven is because it is getting chilly out here. Just carefully pull it out and use our toothpick. Press right in the middle there and pull it up. And it comes out mostly clean. See, it's got just a little bit of residue on it, but that's just because of your pumpkin and things like that. But it is a pretty clean toothpick. So the next thing we're going to do is take it out of the oven. Carefully, this is going to be very hot. Grab our edges, bring it up here. Always make sure you turn off your oven. And let's take a peek at that crust. And just because it's silicone does not mean it's not going to be hot. So carefully removing this. Oh, look at that perfect crust. Oh, that's excellent. Sometimes that shrinks in a little bit, but you'll notice it still has that really pretty wave there on the edges. Unfortunately though, now it has to cool. You want to let your pumpkin pie cool for at least 2 hours before you serve it. So I guess I'll see you in 2 hours. All right, our pumpkin pie is cool and ready to be cut. Let's get ourselves a testing slice. I am not the perfect cutter, so. Oof, but it slides right through. You've got that crisp crust edge. And I am just going to cut us a little piece. Let's see if I cut deep enough. Looks like I did. Perfect. And I've got my apple spice tea, which will go perfect with this. Let's give it a try. Oh, I love that crust. That is pretty good. Perfect. Now the real test. What do you think? Not so bad? Not so bad. Hopefully this gave you guys a little bit of confidence in your pumpkin pie making skills, and maybe this year you can try making it for yourself. I'll get better at this.